Program Specialist for the chapter. Thank you everyone for coming out today. This is actually the second program we've done in Johnson City, so really happy everybody came out today. So we'll go ahead and thank our sponsors for today. Chapter sponsors this year. At silver level, we have EcoLogical Energy Systems, Green Spaces, Partners Development and Train. And as bronze level sponsors, we have Benefield Brickers Design Build Company, Blaine Construction, Brewer Ingham Fuller Architects, Elizabeth Easton Architecture, Facility Systems Consultants, Hickory Construction, Johnson Gallion Construction Incorporated, Knoxville Community Development Corporation, Marvin Concepts, McCarty Wholesale and McCarty Architects, Theo Handling Group, Oak Ridge Associated Universities, S&M Sales and Marketing Consultants, and Shaw Contract Group. Without further ado, Nick Safay has a master's degree concentrating in sustainable development from the School for International Training in Brattleboro, Vermont. He has worked for several prominent environmental nonprofit organizations, including the Appalachian Sustainable Development and People Incorporated. Nick is currently Vice President of Operations and Development for EcoLogical Energy Systems, a Tri-Cities renewable energy engineering, procurement, and contracting company offering wind and solar solutions for home, office, and community. Nick also volunteers with several organizations. He is a board member for the U.S. Green Building Council's East Tennessee chapter. He works with the Policy Committee of the Tennessee Solar Energy Industries Association and is a longtime member of the town of Abingdon, Virginia's Go Green Committee. Nick is a certified lead green associate with the U.S. Green Building Council, a certified building analyst with the Building Performance Institute, and has passed entry-level solar photovoltaic exam with the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. So without further ado, thanks, Dave.
The alphabet soup after the name. And yeah, I'm on the board for the chapter in Knoxville. We're trying to get more representation in the Tri-Cities area, so we're trying to get more education going on here. So I think our next focus is going to be on green homes. We're going to have an architect and a green residential builder from Knoxville come up. They've been doing a lot of LEED for homes and Earthcraft and some other certifications, Energy Star. Talk about that and how they're doing it down in Knoxville and try and get more of that going on in our area. And then maybe after that we can get more of a consensus on what more folks would like to see more of for education. I know some folks have specific areas of their LEED or AIA credits that they need to do their continuing education, so we might be able to help out more with that. So without further ado, yeah, I'm going to talk about not so much all renewable energy. I'm going to focus more on solar and wind here today. Geothermal and biomass and all that stuff, I just don't really have that much background in. I could probably point you in some directions of organizations that do a lot of that stuff. If you do have more questions about that stuff, that are pretty good at that stuff. There's a company down in Knoxville, Chattanooga area now that I hear is doing a lot of biomass stuff, and switch drafts, switchblade, whatever. They're doing a lot of stuff like that down at Walker Sausage Farm in I think that's the Knoxville area, but there's a lot of other stuff going on in the area, but these are definitely the two prominent ones in the nation and definitely in the state of Tennessee that I'm going to be talking about. And plug EcoLogical really quick here. We're a Bristol company. We do wind and solar. We're on the Parkway if you ever want to come in and visit our store. We've installed about a 0.5 megawatt of wind and solar electricity, definitely way more solar than wind. We only do the residential wind turbines, but we've been definitely hitting a big boom here in the last year and a half, and it's kind of why I'm able to be here and talk about this presentation today. So I'm going to start with the wind industry. Wind almost doubled in growth last year over 2011. That's predominantly because of those big 1.5, 2.5 megawatt wind turbines that are being installed, in the Midwest specifically, where they have really good wind capacity. This is just a really great figure to know that wind is getting up there. It's 6% of America's energy capacity now. Solar is at about 1% now, so it's definitely booming. Natural gas, of course, is definitely the biggest growth of all our energy capacity lately. I think natural gas is up to almost 40% of our capacity, 35% around. Coal's dropped down to, I think, around 35% itself. So it's exciting to see the wind is happening, but it's definitely more on the utility, commercial, large commercial scale. If you guys have any questions or doubt anything that I say at any moment, go ahead and feel free to comment or raise your hand or anything like that. I don't mind at all. Compared to the rest of the world, North America, United States in general, we're actually second in the world in wind capacity installed. China is number one. We actually produce more wind electricity than anybody else in the world. We actually have a really good wind resource here in the U.S., one of the best actually. We don't take advantage of our offshore wind yet, but we're starting to, but I think America is supplying about 27–28% of the world's wind energy supply. China's next at around 24%, and then next after that is Germany, way down at about 16%. So we are a major player in the wind industry globally, and that's exciting to see. There are tax credits, obviously, that corporations are able to take care of. There's been a lot of controversy over that stuff. The wind energy production tax credit is basically a write-off for every corporations can get a 2.3 cent per kilowatt hour that they produce write-off on their taxes for their tax credits for that. There's also a 30% federal tax credit, so the total cost of the system installed, they can write off 30% of that as a tax credit. For commercials, commercial systems, that's great because they're like, that's 30% of that cost of that system. We don't have to pay the IRS. Plus there's bonus depreciation for commercial establishments too. It's at 50% bonus depreciation right now, which can lower your tax bracket in a way that basically write off another 25% of the cost of the system. Throw in the wind tax credit, production tax credit, the systems can literally pay off about almost 2/3 of themselves in about the first year or two. So wind is booming, but that tax credit, we were worried it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to be around anymore for this year. They extended it, and now of course we're worrying again that it's not going to be around for next year. Offshore wind, I really want to touch on this. Scandinavia countries, Northern Europe, they're doing a lot of offshore wind, and there's a lot of great resources. Definitely huge resources on the offshore wind. It is expensive to do, and a lot of people don't like the way it looks. We hear Donald Trump threatening that township in Ireland that he's going to sue them for putting up a huge wind farm offshore of one of his golf courses. But that wind farm is going to be able to supply electricity to power about 400,000 homes. So the country and that local area are basically telling Donald Trump that he's going to deal with it. We don't know if he's going to get sued. We'll see about that. We'll be a long time before we find out. There are all types of different turbines out there these days. I can't keep up with it at all. This has become one of the more popular ones. This is a company that makes the more popular of them called Urban Green Energy. There's a lot of these guys getting installed these days. It has come to outpace the wind spire or the vertical axis turbine, which was the most popular one a couple of years ago. I don't even know how some of these other ones here function, but these are definitely the more prominent turbines. This is the latest one. It's called the whale fin, and for some reason, because of that design in the turbine blade there, it actually will produce more electricity than a conventional turbine next to it in the same wind capacity. So those are kind of a feel of what you can see. I've seen these going up on football stadiums, actually, and those are getting very popular. So in last year, we installed over 13,000 megawatts of wind electricity. So yeah, there was 90% growth. The growth has been good. The drop here was really due to natural gas having a really big boom that year and kind of just taking over the whole energy market that year in general. Even solar saw a little bit of a decline in its growth, and I'll talk about it a little bit later here. But that's how much we've been installing lately. And again, wind is now supplying about 6% of the electricity for the United States. These are the leading states. Texas is by far about everyone beat double. It's predominantly in the Panhandle. But what's funny about this is Iowa is producing more wind electricity than any other state. They have such a great wind resource in the northwest pocket, and they've installed really efficient, really big turbines in this area that they are actually outproducing Texas, and so is South Dakota, and so is North Dakota, because of the same reasons. They are producing more electricity with their wind, even though they have less capacity built. A wind turbine in general is only really going to produce about 50% of its capacity over your year. These things are built and then they're nameplated to be at a maximum super high wind speed with the perfect conditions, and that just doesn't happen very often. So generally throughout a year, they're only really going to produce about 50% of their efficiency. But if you get into some of the better wind areas, and they're going to be producing a little bit more like you see in Iowa and the coast. Here's our wind resource. Here's what I was talking about with our offshore wind. We have huge potential for offshore wind. This is triple the amount of electricity we use in the country in a year. So we can do wind. The potential is there. It's going to take a little while to get there. Wind, on this industrial scale, this utility scale, is kind of new still. Originally it was used by farmers, using it for pumps and stuff like that. But now that we're using it to really pump electricity into our grid, we might get here someday. And to that, the Department of Energy has a goal to have 20% of, yes?
How far offshore do the turbines have to be?
They don't have to be very far offshore. I mean, you can see I think this is a picture, wrong way, a picture this is off of Sweden, and you can see they're not very far off. A lot of people don't want to see them though, so that's where there's a lot of upheaval, even locally on onshore wind systems. That growing up, they had a huge battle to do a wind farm up on a mountain up there, and basically they're not doing it. They did a little bit of it, but they're not doing it. Locally, I just imagine that we're not going to have a lot of support in general from the public to really do these kind of things on the onshore. So you can imagine what people are saying about offshore systems. There's one in Maine that went online a few months ago, and there's another one on the New Hampshire, Massachusetts coast that's getting ready to go online too. They're very small in comparison to some of the other ones we're seeing from other countries. So it's there. Virginia talks about it a lot, but we just haven't had anything happen. Hopefully soon. Department of Energy wants to reach this goal by 2030 of 20% wind energy for the whole nation. We're on track to do that. I'm not so sure how we're going to be able to hit that kind of growth, but if the turbines get more efficient and we can access that offshore wind potential, then I can see this happening. They don't have a goal like this for solar. Their goal, Department of Energy's goal for solar is more geared towards lowering the cost to have more residential and light commercial systems installed. Tennessee, we basically got one turbine, one wind farm down in Buffalo Mountain, right there, that is 28 megawatts. So you can see that other than that wind farm down in Buffalo Mountain, we don't have much wind installed. We don't have a lot of wind potential in our area though. Even this whole area, our company, we try to sell wind turbines, and it's kind of hard to do because there's no one really in a good wind area. To be really efficient with your wind turbine, you need to be in a category 3, and we're all in category 1 in this area, even up in Virginia, and even up in some parts of Kentucky. There are little pockets of being in category 2 for wind categories, which makes it sort of okay to do wind, but you're still not in that category 3. So for us, our company, we've installed them basically because people just want to have a wind turbine, and that's great for us, of course. And there were grants out there, of course, too, that helped people purchase these things. But we just really don't have the wind capacity to really have a good wind resource here in our state and in basically the region. The Boone area, the mountain ridges there in North Carolina, those have good potential, but it's just not in our area quite yet. There is a big manufacturer down in the Chattanooga area that is manufacturing big poles for those big 200, 300-foot turbines. They do the poles, the ladders, basically all the big vertical stuff they're manufacturing. They employ about 6,000 people worldwide, and I think they employ a few hundred or so down in Chattanooga. They have a lot of offices around the globe and manufacturing facilities. I don't know much about these guys, but it was cool to learn that we have a big manufacturer in the state doing this stuff. Buffalo Mountain again is our big system, our small wind farm. TVA owns it. It's really part of their green switch program. I don't know if you hear on the radio where you can pay a little bit extra money every month, and you're supporting these green initiatives of TVA. A lot of people will call and be like, oh, I've got the green switch program, so I'm getting renewable energy fed into my home. And I'd be like, no, that just means you're supporting this program. And unfortunately, there's no way for the grid to be able to tell you that you're getting your wind energy fed into your home. It's just supporting this initiative, and I'll talk about some more of TVA's initiatives coming up here in a little bit too. So that's predominantly what we have going on here in Tennessee. They have 15 1.8 megawatt wind turbines up there, so they're big puppies. They're pumping out a lot of electricity. They probably pump out, on average, around 3 million kilowatt hours a year each. And that's enough to power a good 450 homes a year. So they're doing a really good job. They're putting a good amount of electricity in the supply. But you saw a lot of the slide a few slides ago. That's only a tenth of a percentage of Tennessee's electricity need, and the potential of Tennessee, like you saw, we can only get about 1%. So there's 15 of these 1.8 guys up there. They were installed in 2004. Back in 2000, they installed 3. They were about 600 kilowatt turbines, so there's a total of 18 turbines up there. You can go up there and check it out. You just need to contact TVA so we're doing a full trip up there. I'm definitely not a mechanic, definitely not an engineer. I'm more on the development side of things for business. But basically you got the gist of when the blades are moving, it's making the shaft move, and in this seal where all the guts are going on, that's where everything is going down. For you engineers or mechanics, there is that. Again, I'm just like basically, okay, that thing's moving, it's creating some voltage up there, and you get your electricity, and it goes down to a transformer, and it shoots it off to the grid. That definitely is the main gist of probably 90–95% of all wind energy is for grid tie to put the electricity back into the grid. Sorry about the slide, it's fuzzy. Really the only one I can find for a grid tie wind turbine stuff. But basically for a residential one, you use that electricity until you're not using it anymore, and your utility company will credit that to your bill if you're overproducing at any moment. That's called net metering, and any excess they will credit back to your bill. So your meter will actually turn backwards if you're producing more than what you're using at any moment. But the state of Tennessee is one of only 4 states in our nation that does not have a net metering policy. We're in there with Alabama, Mississippi, and North Dakota, and the only 4 states that don't have a net metering policy. And that is because TVA is a dual metering utility company. So what TVA does is they want that electricity to themselves. They buy it off of you through this additional meter that they will install. And I'm going to explain this a little more when I get into the solar side of things. But basically, that's why the solar panels here. But basically, your electricity is going into your inverter. You convert that DC electricity that your wind turbine is creating. You convert it into your AC electricity that the grid wants to buy from you. And this new meter, the TVA, through its local power distributors like the Johnson City, Alabama, Elizabeth Power, TPS, like Bristol, they will come in after all the installation's done and install a new meter. And this meter is called the generation meter, and it records how much electricity your system produces. And then you sell it to them at a premium. TVA is currently buying wind energy back at 3 cents above the retail rate. So we're paying them around 9.1 cents a kilowatt hour. They'll buy it back at 12.1 cents a kilowatt hour for the first 10 years of your contract, and then you're guaranteed the system lifetime after that. They buy it back at whatever the going retail rate is. The reason TVA is buying this back, and I'm going to explain a little bit more of this with the solar side of things, they keep the energy credits that your system produces, and then they can sell those renewable energy credits on voluntary carbon exchange markets. Cap and trade kind of happening on the voluntary level, where corporations are looking to increase their social responsibility index, and they buy these renewable energy credits to increase their score to kind of attract social entrepreneurs and investors. So you're producing the electricity, TVA is buying it back from you, and you're still just buying your regular electricity back from TVA. They would like to say that if your demand is powerful enough that you're just drawing it right back, but there's no way that they can guarantee that. So that's the gist of kind of the TBA program. Again, I'm going to explain that a little bit further on the solar side of things. Anybody have any questions about that? I'm not plugging a product, USGBC. I'm just going to bring up, this was definitely the most popular wind turbine on the residential side of things in the last 2 years. It's the SkyStream 3.7. It's made by a company called Southwest Wind Power. The big 1.5 megawatt GE wind turbines, those can produce around 250 million kilowatt hours of electricity in a year on that 50% capacity where they're producing. This little guy here, as you can see, if he's getting what we try to get people to have at least this much wind on average throughout the year, that they can produce maybe around 500 kilowatt hours in a month, which is pretty good. That can pretty much wipe out half to 2/3 of the average home's electricity bill. This was a very popular turbine. We've installed a few. There's about 13,000 of them installed in the US right now. Good looking turbine. They kind of made a little design with the blades there. They have got great online monitoring too, so as the customer and the owner, you can always go online to see how cool, how much production you're getting. And also the installers will get alerted through this online communications if you have a turbine go down or there's a problem or something like that. So a service call being done. We helped a contractor commission one of these not far from here, Mountain Empire Community College. We did a couple up at Virginia Highlands Community College. We don't have any in Tennessee. I don't know of any that are installed in Tennessee. I'm sure there are. There's a little bit more wind potential in the Memphis area because it's starting to get over to that area, but there's just not very many residential wind turbines going on in the state. And unfortunately, we are hearing that this company is going through bankruptcy right now. We haven't been alerted to it officially, but that's word on the street. That's what's happening with residential wind turbines pretty much throughout the U.S. All the other ones, there's another one I'll show here, going through bankruptcy. So it's kind of a bummer. We thought residential wind would be a big boom, and it's just not really, hasn't been working out to the degree that we were hoping. And this is kind of the process. We did do one over the Cherokee Reservation in North Carolina. Just kind of showing some slides and what it looked like when it was going up. This guy installed concrete foundation and all is going to cost about $22,000. Taking into the fact that you're going to get a 30% tax credit, that's $7 grand back in taxes, and TDA will even kick in a $1,000 rebate once you have the system commissioned. And then if you're commercial or you can be noted as a corporate entity, then you can take advantage of the production tax credit as well.
How many do they have on the reservation?
That's the only one that I know of over there. They have some solar going on there too. They took advantage of a lot of grants. Plus, this is in North Carolina. North Carolina throws another 35% state tax credit on top of that 30% federal income tax credit. 65% return those tax credits if you have the tax appetite to take advantage of it. So that's a big thing. And there's a big solar boom going on in North Carolina too. Banks are installing huge solar farms left and right to get those tax credits, and it's a long-term safe investment too. So there's a lot more solar definitely going on in our southeast, if you will. Here's the only turbine that we've installed, at least in Tennessee. It's up on Roan Mountain. It's the little Windspire, the vertical access one, the company that they have just finished going through bankruptcy, and they've been bought by, their manufacturing rights were bought by another company, so they're going to start producing, and they hope that they've worked out some kinks, because honestly this thing's been a heartache to us as an installation company. There's been issues with it left and right. Plus with wind, there's moving parts, I typically have to maintain them, all that good stuff. So honestly, I'm not a big fan of wind on the small scale. We can talk about that later if you like. But that also was a nice shot to do for us. So now on to solar. Did anybody have any questions there about wind before I go on? Okay, cool. Solar definitely had huge growth as well last year. Not quite what wind did, because wind was having a lot more of those big wind turbines installed. But 76% growth is great. And actually, this much being installed pretty much doubled the entire capacity of US of all other installations in the past. So we're seeing solar getting a lot more popular. And we're seeing a lot of help, actually. This is the utility growth of just last year. Arizona, California, Nevada are tearing it up with installing solar farms for utility scale. Arizona specifically, there are tax credits, there are utility rebates, there are extra incentives in these states that are really making solar good. Plus, the cost of electricity over in these states is twice what we're paying here, even more in some places. We are doing a project in California where the company is paying something like 22 to 23 cents a kilowatt hour for their electricity, and we're paying 9. So that helps out a lot with why there's more installations going on in these other states. And some other states that don't have as high utility rates just offer more incentives. As you can see, look at North Carolina right there in the top 5 because of that state income tax credit that is really helping out over there. New Jersey is the same. They offer a whole slew of incentives for people to go solar. Hawaii, I was in Hawaii in February. My wife was just getting ticked off at me because all I was doing was taking pictures of solar everywhere. Solar water heating and solar photovoltaic on every single home, it seemed like. You know what? Maui gets 10% of its electricity from a wind farm going up a mountain too. They're paying over 30 cents a kilowatt hour out there in Hawaii. So that really helps out when you're looking at it as an investment, like most of our clients do in our business, that holy smokes, this system that would pay back in about 15 years in Tennessee, because we're paying a third what they are in Hawaii, their systems pay back in 3-4 years over there. So it's definitely an interesting thing, but hey, we're right in there. Got to be proud. Tennessee is way up there, and that is definitely due to the TVA programs that are going on. And I mentioned there we go, the Philadelphia Eagles. I was up in Philly a few months ago for a conference, and when I traveled by, their whole siding is solar. They're putting those wind turbines by the Urban Green Energy up there. The Washington Redskins have a 2 megawatt solar array for parking canopy for when people come out and get in their car's not hot anymore. It's sitting in the sun all day. The Seattle Seahawks, the Baltimore Ravens are going to install solar. The Patriots, the Texans, that new big 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers are installing a LEED Platinum certified football stadium, and it's going to have a huge solar array too. So a lot of solar going on. Google and Walmart are 2 of the biggest solar installers as a customer, and the #1 solar customer in the U.S. is definitely the United States military. They don't want to rely on the grid too much, so they love having solar power everywhere. It's definitely a big booming industry. If I had to put my money on it, I'm definitely going to put my money on solar outgrowing wind this year. We'll see what happens. Tennessee, it's doing great. The solar, we are at, I think we're at about 1% of Tennessee's electricity is coming from solar now. Oh wait, no, 0.5%. We're getting a lot of hypes that are going on in Tennessee. But Tennessee is definitely a big player nationally compared to a lot of the other states. Virginia is about 40th, so we're definitely doing a lot more than some of our neighbors. Georgia just had a big program get announced by Georgia Power, where they're offering this great new incentive package for solar, so popular that it only lasted for 3 months because they had a capacity limit for the program in Georgia that it closed by the beginning of April. TVA's program we'll talk about in a second is already closed too. But we're seeing a lot of installations going on here in Tennessee. We're hoping we can get more. So the big driver of the solar industry is definitely the TVA program. Initially, when it started, it was called the Generation Partners Program. Basically, what they're doing is it's buying your solar electricity back from you at 12 cents above the retail rate per kilowatt hour. When wind was 3 cents, it still is, but they're buying solar back at 12 cents above retail. And they lock you into a contract for 20 years. For the first 10 years of that contract, they buy it back at that premium over whatever the going retail rate is. So when we do a solar proposal, we do a 2.5% inflation factor over the regular kilowatt usage, and then we can throw that 12 cents above it. A lot of companies will use 5 and 7% for inflation factor. The national average is about 2.5%, except for up in the APCO land for Appalachian Power, that's definitely 5%. And they don't enjoy these incentives. So TVA gives you, buy it back at a premium. They also kick you in a $1,000 rebate for when you have your system installed. People usually see that back in about a month. This program ended the end of third quarter last year. They changed the name, I think more to coincide with that Green Switch program, the Green Power Provider program. And they changed the premium from 12 cents to 9 cents. So you get locked into a 10-year contract at 9 cents. That was for this year. And they limited the installation capacity. Basically, last year, people were installing huge systems on a meter that may have only been running on a street light or something. So they were just getting paid a huge amount of premium onto their energy bill, and then TVA cuts them a check for whatever over usage they have with the premium. So people were going crazy installing huge amounts of solar on little meters, meters having little usage. We even had a bunch of customers doing that. But then TVA caught on to that a little bit and said, you know, that's a little too much. So now we're saying, if you want to have a system that's greater than a 10 kW system, so about 40 panels, your home or your building has to use how much that will produce. So basically, if we want someone to have over a 10 kW system, we have to do demand kind of calculation. Basically, how many kilowatt hours did you use last year in 12 months? And say, oh, hey, you've used so much that we can put a 12 kW or 15 kW or 20 kW system on your bill. So that ticked off a lot of folks at one point, yeah.
Why does TVA care?
Why do they care?
Why do they want to?
I think they were having, honestly, a hard time managing everything. Basically, they had one guy managing the Generation Partners program. Great guy, really friendly to installers, I feel. Some installers don't go right over. He was trying to manage this whole thing. And I think when he started seeing the money that TVA was paying out, he thought that he's more of an economist, and he thought that it wasn't a sustainable way to have the program keep going. So that's why we limited. We're pretty sure he won't ever say that officially, but I'm pretty sure that's why that kind of got capped at that for Matt being more of an economist. But TVA does get benefits of selling those energy credits, and we're sure they're making a good amount of money off of that. But that's the only reason I can come up with that they've limited the capacity of the installation, is that it was just too much for them to handle. Now they promoted Matt to another position, and now they're hiring a new person for that position. So now we're kind of like, is that going to help, or what's going to go on there? Because Matt's now going to be overseeing the bigger programs for solar, and hopefully helping out the Green Power Provider program. That's the only thing I can come up with.
Is there any possibility that the state is going to kick in with an incentive of its own, state to the city?
No, not from what I've heard when I go to any meetings. Like the lieutenant governor, who's from Bristol basically, has made it loud and clear that he thinks that these industries should grow and survive completely on their own, unlike all the other energy industries.
Right.
He's made it loud and clear. You know, fortunately for this industry, Bredesen, former Governor Bredesen, was very proactive with solar, and we put all that DOE community block grant money into solar, and saw a lot of solar growth. There's a lot of controversy after he left, and he invested in a huge solar farm after that, but we try not to talk about that too much. But we are not seeing any. We don't think we're going to see anything of that. Especially in Virginia, same thing. We're like trying to drool over the possibility of anything like this happening in Virginia with APCO and Green Power, and the governor and the attorney general, and all made it loud and clear that's never going to happen. But Dominion Power just will be opening a program where they're going to be buying solar back at 15 cents a kilowatt hour flat rate. But we're hearing it's only going to be for 5 years. And they'll buy it back at the Northeast already. So there's all these different programs going on. It's definitely a juggling act. And if anybody doesn't know about the website, desireusa.org, this completely lists every incentive state total out there. And it's DSIREUSA.org. Then if you put DES, you might get a funny website or something. But literally, when you go to that website, it'll bring up a map of the U.S. and you can click on your state, and it'll have every incentive by county, by utility, by state, for energy efficiency and renewable energy. North Carolina State University, they kind of handle this website. They do a really good job at it. And then you can also see all the federal incentives out there. It's a great website. They keep it pretty up to date too. Figuring this stuff out. Extended the contract to 20 years. I already mentioned when it was Generation Partners, it was only a 10-year contract because they want those renewable energy credits. Renewable energy credits are basically every 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a renewable energy system produces, a megawatt of production is worth an energy credit. And there are voluntary carbon exchange markets in different markets that people can sell these credits to. TVA being a sort of government entity or whatever they are, exemplary exemption utility they call themselves or whatever. They have access to sell these credits because you sign them over to them when you sign this contract on any of these markets basically. And the DC market is now paying like $400 to $450 credit. But as an individual or a company, like when we're in APCO territory and we're installing in APCO territory, APCO doesn't want, they don't offer these incentives and APCO doesn't want those energy credits. But for some reason, the service area of APCO can only sell these credits. The customers can only sell the credits to the Pennsylvania market that's anywhere from $14 to $22 a credit. So it's more of a pain in the butt actually for that little money to sell these credits for our customers. The other biggie of the Green Power Providers Program, which is a good thing, is they're now requiring at least the company installing the system at least have a NABCEP entry-level achievement person on staff, be serving in some capacity as a project manager. NABCEP, James mentioned, I've passed the North American Board Certified Energy Practitioners. Really, it's a rigorous exam showing that you understand electrical theory, you understand the safety behind these installations and everything like that. Because electrical, these things, if they're not grounded right, then we can have some serious issues of fires and stuff like that going on. Disconnect boxes have to be installed and run into these things, so fire departments can come in and disconnect these things, or maintenance needs to be served on. A lot of that stuff goes on, so it's kind of a good thing that TVA made that kind of requirement to make sure these installations are actually being done properly. So that's where we're at now with the Green Power Provider Program, formerly the Generation Partners Program. But the problem was that they limited the capacity for these installations this year at 7.5 megawatts. And by the end of January, we already had about 2.5 megawatts. And next thing we knew, it was full. About a month ago, it was already filled up. Now, a big problem that a lot of us installers have is that we know firsthand that there are developers out there that go out and submit applications to TVA to be approved for properties that they have no business contract with or anything like that. They just hope in the future that they'll get this business. TVA says that once we approve a contract, you have 6 months to have the system commissioned. If you don't get that premium. And basically, we might not even credit you anything. So there's a 6-month time frame there that we feel that right in January, there was probably at least 2 megawatts of electricity capacity for the solar program, well, this is a renewable energy program, that were basically thrown at TVA, TVA approved, not knowing what was going on, and will not be used. So maybe by July, TVA will say, hey, you know what, there's about a megawatt of electricity in January that we approved wasn't installed. We're praying and lobbying TVA very hard through the Tennessee Solar Energy Association, which is the Tennessee chapter of the big national solar energy industry association, which is definitely the #1 solar trade association out there. Please put that back. We were hoping they would put back unused capacity in 2012, which was a lot, but they came out a couple months ago and said that they're not going to do that. So, but they are hinting that they might put stuff back from this year later on down the road of this year. We're not keeping our, we're not holding our breath on that at all. We do, as a company like ours, we have contracts in a pile, signed and ready to go, waiting for that to happen, but we're not sure that's going to happen at all. So that was kind of a big bummer, if you will, for a lot of installers, 6,000 people or so are employed by the solar value chain in Tennessee, let alone Alabama, Mississippi, a little trickle of Virginia and North Carolina that TVA goes into. So we'll see what happens on that. And we're sure the TVA is going to raise this for next year. But on that, we're pretty sure the TVA is going to reduce that premium from 9 cents a kilowatt hour that we locked into that 10-year contract to 6 cents. And then we're thinking that in 2015, it'll be 3. And then in 2017, it might be away, which would be really hard for us because that 30% federal income tax credit that we enjoy is only good through 2016. So if that doesn't get extended, and this doesn't get extended, if we haven't brought the cost of solar down like we have been, then we could be in a world of hurt for our little industry. Cost of solar, though, due to programs like these across the nation, has dropped about 50% in the last 2 years or so. When I first joined this company, it was December of 2011, and I was talking to someone that I knew, and she said, I had a 3 kilowatt system priced at about $30,000 a year ago. The 3 kilowatt system is about 12 panels. And I said, well, let me go and see what it's worth now, or how much it would cost now. Came back to $12,000. So she bought 2. And there was also more 100% accelerated depreciation, and she wrote it off for her business and everything like that. It is happening. The price of solar is dropping a lot. Panels are about as cheap as they're probably going to get. Some panels that you can get off the internet that are Chinese without a warranty, you can probably get one for $150. Panels that are good with good warranties, we're selling for a couple $100, a few $100. So panels are really cheap. It's the other hardware involved with it. The racking is still expensive. The inverters are really expensive. The inverters that convert that DC electricity to your AC electricity, thousands of dollars. And then if you want to have an off-grid system, so you're not getting any electricity from the utility company, you're getting all your electricity from your solar system, you have to have a big battery-based system, then you have to have a charge controller to go in between the solar and the battery-based systems, so the solar doesn't pump the batteries away. The batteries are $400 each, charge controller is $2,000. It still can get pretty pricey on it. That's why we pretty much 99% of the installations that we do are grid tied in the TVA program or in the APCO's program, who does net metering, so they buy the electricity back to the customer at the going retail rate, which is about 12 cents a kilowatt hour on that service area. Kings Court, Abingdon, those areas. So here's kind of a cost analysis. This was from a couple months ago, actually, so this is actually more around 380, 385. But this is kind of break it down to 10 kilowatt systems, about 40 solar modules, but I'll talk about that later. 40 solar panels on a roof or ground. And this is that tax credit, the federal income tax credit. It's good through 2016. So basically, if you're a homeowner or like a resident, and you want to be able to consume that whole tax credit in that first year, if you have paid in $12,000 in taxes the year before, the IRS will give you $12,000 back. If you've only paid $10,000 in taxes, they'll give you $10,000 back. And then the next year, if you paid in $2,000 in taxes, they'll give you that $2,000 back. It'll roll over for up to 5 years. So if you install something in 2016, when the tax credit, the last year of the tax credit, you'll have 5 years to be able to receive all that benefit from it back. Then TVA kicks in that rebate. You're going to generate about 14,000 kilowatt hours of electricity from the 10 kilowatt system, and that was that limit that TVA has. Unless that's the biggest you can do, unless you consume more electricity, then you can go bigger. That's why I use the 10 kilowatt there. So that's how much electricity, that's how much energy credit you're going to produce just from the solar. So that's just from the solar. And that's just the first year, so that's without inflation on the years to come. And that's how much you're going to generate for your premium from the TVA programs. If you add those two together, you're getting like $2,600 a year in energy credits, and then it bumps up a little bit with inflation. So you're guaranteed, this definitely, and then you're also kind of guaranteed this for 20 years, whatever the inflation rate is. That's kind of the gist of a ROI analysis. When you get proposals from solar installers, you can probably get a 30-page thing saying all this stuff, and it can be a little overwhelming, but we just want to make sure that we're showing you everything. And we'll have a little disclaimer. I should have a little disclaimer here. the actual results cannot be guaranteed. We are not tax consultants. Please consult your tax.
Can you tell us a little about the fees now? Is that consistent across the distributors or does it differ with your?
Yeah. So Johnson City Power Board came out and basically said we want this. They're charging a fee of at least $900 to have a contract with them, because you have to have a participation agreement with TVA for their program. Then you have to have an interconnection agreement with Power Board or other utility companies. Johnson City Power Board is the only one that I know is charging that much money. They basically are saying, you know, they're saying we have to do engineering, we have to come and install the meter and all this other stuff. Hey, you know what? They're right. So it's kind of like, okay, we kind of get where you're coming from with that, but that's an extreme amount of money for a customer, basically to say, if I want to submit an application to these people, I have to pay them $900. And in some cases, if the system is over 10 kW and it's like a complex kind of thing, then they'll do an extra engineering review and throw an extra money on top of that. BTES, Bristol Tennessee Essential Services, does not charge that fee. BVU, Bristol Virginia Utilities, which is still a TVA distributor, charges $100. Elizabeth and Power, I think, is $50. Holston Electric, nothing. A lot of these others, Nashville and the NEC, they're not charging anything. So there are, I don't know where the Power Board came up with that, but they're basically wanting that $1,000 for themselves.
You see solar energy usage in Jefferson County for Appalachian Electric or, you know?
For where, that's APCO service area?
Yes.
So it's Kingsport kind of
No,
area?
Appalachian is Jefferson County.
Oh.
Appalachian Electric.
Yeah.
Okay, Appalachian Electric. Is that where the big school system, they had a bunch of school systems that went online over there, I think? Is that? I'm not 100%. tell you the truth. No.
Jefferson City, Danvers.
No, I don't know of any going on. I know that, like, I know stuff in Rogersville and Church Hill, stuff like that, but I don't know that specific area. I know we haven't done any of it, and I watch our competitors' websites like Hawk, and I haven't seen them doing the kinds of things. So this is a residential kind of example, and then when you go to the commercial, 50 kW is the limit for the Green Power Combined program. That's it. That's the limit you can go. Then they have other programs that I'll talk about to do bigger systems. But a 50 kW system, we're talking 200, 210 solar panels, and it produces a lot of electricity. So and this is a little outdated too. This should be more like 350, 345. But to kind of give you the sense, there's that tax credit that the company doesn't have to pay the IRS when they have to do their taxes. That's nice and simple. That's
So they
why.
have, I'm sorry. So they have to have the extra land to put panels.
We've done 50 kWs on roofs, so it just depends on how you want it. We've done them on the ground too. We did a dairy barn on a big old barn too. Yeah, you know, panels are 3.5 feet, no, about 2.5 feet wide, maybe 5 feet tall. They weigh like 25 pounds. So we have no problems, you know, with snow load calculations for code. In agriculture, you know, we don't even have to get a permit basically for that stuff. We've never had any issues getting permits, except for a school project that we're doing now. We just didn't know that we had to submit the engineering review to the state fire marshal. That was the only thing. And he said, I don't need to do this, and gave it right back to us. So there haven't been any issues with like permits and stuff like that. Yeah, if you've got any space, then please do it, because if you have a lot of space, which I'll talk about here in a second, then there's more lucrative systems to install. Oh, sorry. So, and the rebate. So after being able to really receive those incentives, some companies don't have that tax appetite. You have to owe the IRS that much money to be able to take advantage of that. So there's that, you have to play into it. So that drops it down to that. Then you have 50% bonus depreciation. So that's 50% of the cost of the system you can write off for your taxes to lower your tax bracket. That's actual money, and this is actually lowering your tax bracket. And if you have the tax, if you have that 35% tax bracket, then that could drop off another $29,000, $30,000 in tax money you don't owe the IRS basically. And then throw in your first 2 years of energy, your first year of energy credits, which is about $13,000. That's how much the out of pocket is from that after you receive all those incentives. 50 kW system, that's a little bit highball number there. I would more guarantee about 68,000 kilowatt hours, but to give you kind of a sense of what that system will provide you in energy credits on your electricity bill. And if you have so many energy credits on your monthly bill, then your local power distributor through TVA will write you a check that month for how much it is. So a lot of people look at this as a really nice investment. And hey, 56% return in the first year and 5.5-year payback is definitely better than most of your bank loans are going to be. So solar PV, solar panels are made from polysilicon. Silicon is like the second most abundant element on Earth's crust. It's sand. It's the stuff we use to make glasses and plates and fiber optic cables and all that stuff. So there's a good amount of it around. We're always pretty much hopefully going to have enough of it. I think it's like the sixth most abundant element in the universe. And then they take the polysilicon and they put it in this big barrel. They heat it up to about 3,000 degrees and they get this like mulchy, nasty stuff. And then they drop down a silicon crystal, a pure silicon crystal into it. And then when they pull it out, it makes this kind of round, long piece of, they call it an ingot. And they let that cool for about, I think it takes about 3 days for it to cool down completely. We did a llama farm up in Bristol. There's this place called Llamas for God, and literally it's like a haven for llamas where you have a llama and you can't take care of it anymore, or if you don't want it anymore or whatever. He was great to them. This sweet old hippie couple will take care of it for you for the rest of its life. They have this cool pig, it's their pet, don't eat me. But fracking innovations are way up. This is a small one. This was basically a 2-car carport. But they wanted an extra shelter for the llamas and everybody, and they also wanted to produce solar electricity. So that's kind of a sense of what was going on there. So they let that ingot cool for about 3 days, and then they took like this piano wire cutting material and they cut them into really thin little things, and that's kind of your solar cell. And when they were mixing that mixture around that vat of polysilicon, they put in boron to give it a positive charge, and then when they do the cell, they layer it with a layer of phosphorus to give it a negative charge. So now you have your negative and positive charge, and that is how, when the photons from your solar radiation hits it, that bounces all of the electrons around and everything, that produces your electricity from your solar power. Again, I'm not a mechanic or an engineer or a scientist. That's my understanding of that. And then that creates the DC power. There's that dairy farm I was talking about. That's a 50-kW idea. Our guys installed that in 5 business days and turned it on. It's pretty cool. So then you also have that really hard tempered glass on there. Like the panel manufacturers we use, they have a big gun. When the panels come off the assembly line, shoot big old blast of imitation hail at the panels as they're coming off to make sure that they're sturdy enough to handle all that. We have a solar farm that I'll show you a little bit where it's right in the middle of the residential community, and we find golf balls out there all the time. So folks are just out there hitting away at our solar panels. We haven't had a panel break or anything like that. So they're very sturdy. They're warranted really great. If you get the big companies like we use Maget or Sharp, SunPower, Solar World, these companies have 25, 30-year warranties on them. If something happens, they're going to replace them. If there's workmanship issues, companies have workmanship. We have a 10-year warranty on them. So you guarantee, good stuff. There are a lot of financial hootenannies of the solar industry as well. We were fortunate to do a nice little size PPA, power purchasing agreement. This is basically where the city of Bristol was looking for this green project to point to. They had actually told us that they have had companies come into Bristol and say, where's your sustainability initiative? Where's your green movement? All that stuff. And Bristol was like, well, we don't really have anything to point to. We have to keep Bristol beautiful and all that, but we don't have like a project. And they said that they've lost businesses coming to Bristol because of that. So they knew that we have an owner that has been a very successful entrepreneur. She owns a very large company in Madden. I think I can show you a picture of that. Universal Company is Abingdon, Virginia has the largest spa product distribution company in North America. They have over 40,000 clients. all this great stuff. They employ about 160 people up there. And she started a sustainability program for them to not only make them green at their warehouse and all that, but to make sure distribute all their vendors were making all their stuff green. So they have sustainability specialists to help organic lotion manufacturers become organic. Say, hey, don't use this ingredient, use this. Spa massages and sell them to Grove Park Inn and all those other companies. So they knew that we had this owner who had a good kind of sense about social entrepreneurship. And they said, well, is there any way that we've heard about these third-party ownerships of solar going on in other states? North Carolina's a big one, especially out west. And she said, well, maybe I can look into doing something like that. So we started going around and looking at sites in Bristol, Tennessee, schools, Viking Hall, all that good stuff. And we came up, they have a demolition landfill in Bristol, Tennessee, just past the racetrack off of Old Beaver Creek Road, which half of it got used up, so they had to cap it off. TDEC came in and put a membrane in. There's another half of it still being used. And we said, wow, an old landfill, it's a demolition landfill, so there's no methane anymore, to capture that and use that. This space is never going to be used, let's solar farm. And so what we're doing there is, after a huge process of getting everything together, we formed a separate LLC, and our LLC basically bought a solar system and installed it and owns it, and is generating electricity and generating a nice amount of income off of it, and of course paid us to do it. IRS is on top of these things, or these PPAs, these third-party ownerships. There's no way anymore that you can overprice these things for your own company, basically. It was happening a lot a few years ago, but it's not happening anymore in my world. So we installed a 200 kilowatt system at $4 a watt, so around $800,000. So they were able to take the tax credit, our owner, because she has a big tax outside, and install almost a 200 kilowatt system, because back then the Green Power, the Generation Partners Program, it had a 200 kilowatt limit instead of a 50 kilowatt limit that it's at now. So what we do is we pay the city an annual leasing fee of $6,000 a year, and then we're also paying them 2 cents a kilowatt hour of the electricity that we generate and sell back to TVA. How am I doing on time? And then we have a 13-year contract with a 12-year extension option. We're filling every year. Because the city's making, after that first 13 years, the city will make around $180,000 for nothing. But we're generating a lot of electricity off of it. So kind of just show us something like that went down. Once everything got approved, we had to do a nice amount of grading, site work. There's a membrane there. So TDEC said we couldn't penetrate the ground like we would have liked to with the poles from the solar mount. So we had to bring in these huge ballast blocks, which we, of course, put too many on a truck one day, got a huge fine. But hey, we found out you can only get one fine in 24 hours. Bring it all up. And the racking went on. I'm not plugging a company, we use different ones too, James, but this is a great racking company. Research all the different, they do carports, just amazing, all types of really cool racking systems. We use them for this project. So a solar panel is actually really a solar module. I mean, it's technical, no one really cares, but a solar panel is actually an array of, it's actually a bunch of solar modules on a string, and then a string of solar panels is an array. So this is an array. This would be the string, and then this one panel would be the module. We still say solar panels. I'm just throwing that out there. A lot of people would be happy in the solar industry if I said that. They're very rigorous about OSHA requirements and all that good stuff to make sure everybody's doing everything the same. Another little thing to show the solar panels are sturdy. And there we go. There's 819 solar panels out there, generating close to 300,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a year. We got that in when it was the 12-cent premium, so we're getting paid 21 cents a kilowatt hour in the first 10 years. Do the math on that, it's anywhere from $55,000 to $70,000 a year of income being generated out there. So it is a very nice investment. If you have that as a property, you do stuff like that, it's very nice. Farmers are being approached by banks and other people to put these things on. So the farmer will get paid that annual leasing fee plus a small residual income off of the electricity production. Conduit. They usually put this underground again. They couldn't penetrate the membrane there, so they had to do a nice run of a lot of volts, or a lot of juice definitely running through there. God, man. Some inspectors are okay with the solar industry's grounding of using little components. Some inspectors want copper everywhere. Wow, copper. There's a lot of copper out there. I'll tell you. And then inverters. This is a very popular inverter. It's the SMA Sunny Wind Tower. These are 8,000s. So there's 21 inverters out there. So we have 39 panels on each inverter. These are great because they record the electricity. You can walk up there and see how much CO2 is been saved, how much it's produced, and all that good stuff. And they have the online monitoring. I have a snapshot of that. We're lucky our installation manager is a former fire chief, so he's very due diligent and all this stuff. But this stuff is very important. All the code inspectors want to see a lot of labels. And then BTS came in and did their thing. We had to have a transformer upgrade and them to install the generation meter. So that's a snapshot of the third. And there's our production. These are low vol productions with the lowest vol that the panels can produce. We're guaranteed 90% efficiency of the solar panels for the warranty for the first 12 years. And then it's MAGE, so we have a 30-year warranty. We're guaranteed 80% efficiency for the remaining 18 years. So I went ahead and did that in calculations here. These are very low vol figures, but when you add that to that and assume that the investor there got that 30% tax credit on the cost of the system, that $800,000 system, plus 100% bonus depreciation right off, and we got that $1,000 unit. But this thing is going to pay itself off in about 4.5 years. So, and it's going to be out there for up to 25 years. So it's a pretty sweet investment going on there. It's a local example of how this is being done. Well, I don't know of many others done in our area. There's a huge one out in Memphis at the Tennessee Agri Center. There's a megawatt system out there that's on the same premise. It's a good thing to check out our big competitor actually. And then, solar is great for commercial businesses to do PR and marketing. Of course, and we do a lot of training and education. I actually leave here, and there's students from Berea College coming in, and I'm taking them around missions. So we have planning commissions, fire departments, all types of people. We bring out there probably 2 or 3 times a month. Here's the other TPA program. James, I'll be really quick. So this other program, the Renewable Standard is for systems greater than 50 kW up to 20 megawatts. They're only paying on average about 3.75 cents a kilowatt hour instead of that guaranteed retail rate that we're paying them at 9 cents a kilowatt hour. That's all you get from that program. So the only way that is a really good investment is if you have like a 10 megawatt system. We're talking millions of dollars for that. But they have this other little niche called the Solar Solutions Initiative. Yes. Where it's kind of like with that green power provider program, these bigger systems, it only can go up to a megawatt system, but they throw on that 8-cent premium for that first 2 years, and you're guaranteed 5% inflation on that 3.75 kilowatt hours. So we're fortunate to get in on one of these that we'll break ground on later in the year, and this is how that can look to a larger system investment, still on TPA's program. These folks are actually paying for this out of pocket. I'm going to show some financing options really quick, but these guys really want these things. So I won't say but the system is going to be about 259 watts installed. That's what that will produce, and that's the low vol guaranteed by a calculator, a DOE calculator from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's called PV watts. So if you ever want to see how much, hey, I want to have a 5 kilowatt system for my home, go to PV watts, just Google it, and you can click on the state, click on your city, enter in how big of a system you're going to have, and it'll tell you monthly how much you'll produce and all that good stuff. So we use that because it's a low vol figure. That's how much, with the premium included, that will produce in the first year. And these guys are using this much electricity, so we're barely wiping that out. But that tax credit, that's That's what made their amounts apply. That's huge. This is, we want to do that. They have big enough tax appetite for the full 50% bonus depreciation incentive, dropping all that down. With that first year energy credits, that's how much out of pocket that comes. And that's a sweet payback. Again, a lot better than most financial institutions are doing off of it. There's my little disclaimer. And then they get to do all these environmental tax, ribbon cutting, and all that good stuff. I'm almost done here. That's what an online communications can look like. They don't need to even go online and look at how your system's doing. Kind of a snapshot of that. The system that we're doing out in California, just to give you a sense of how things look out west. We're doing a big carport system out there, 336 kilowatt carport. So this is it's a spa that doesn't have any canopy for the parking. He complains all the time that his customers, once they leave the spa in Aldridge, it's in Orange County, they come out and they're just mad because their car is blazing hot. So he wants a car canopy, and we said, oh my gosh, solar car canopy. So we're going to do one of these canopies. There's the cost there. That's the utility rebate we're going to get on that system because California's incentivizing this a lot more. They cannot take advantage of the tax credit and all that good stuff, but he said, I don't want to pay for this up front. So we had to find a financing option for him. Monthly payments close to $14,000, which he said is fine. It's a 10-year lease, and at the end of the lease, he buys it back from the bank for $101 for legal purposes. And if you can see, the first year savings because of those tax credits and rebates and everything is basically half the cost of the system. He will be out of pocket for the years 2 through 8, and he will have to replace his inverters, but he can put that money, if he will, he's going to put it in an account, escrow, to be able to offset that. But he's very happy he's going to have this beautiful system to pay off all this stuff. And it has a nice carport, shape in the cars. Here's my local financing experience. On the commercial side of things, you got to have a secure real estate. We haven't been able to find one. So here's the initial note. Here's what they need to pay out. And then after they pay down on the note, after realizing that tax credit in the first year, dropping it down to the new payments, still can't match what the energy savings are going to be. So we get down to about $1 million to make it so you're not out of pocket. We're having banks knocking out our door for this stuff, but we're waiting for them to be able to make this less than this to really make it happen. And here's the school project that we're doing, broken ground next week on, actually. It's going to be a carport thing with a solar outdoor class. James, that's it. Any questions?
Well done. Okay, so before we kind of take questions, I'm going to pass out reports evaluation for today and your certificates. We're at 1 o'clock right now, so it's that time. If you want to stay behind and ask Nick a few questions, please feel free. But otherwise, as soon as I get your reports evaluation back to you, we're done for today. Thank you so much for coming out.
So at what number of panels does it become inefficient? I have to have too few. There's too few.
You want to usually have at least a 2.5 kW, so the 8-panel system is really going to be lowest. We haven't done anything smaller than 3, but we're starting to have people coming out a lot. They're like, hey, I'm a camper, I want to have 2 panels, charge batteries, or fuel, refrigerator. We're too expensive to do stuff like that. You can order that kind of stuff offline to make it more usable, but you want to have about an 8-panel system. And that'll cost around $9,000 or $10,000 for everything installed.
You're still going to be getting your rebate.
Tax credit. Yeah. Even the off-grid systems, the battery bank systems, you still get the tax credit and all that stuff. Yep.
Last night, reading my home building,
Yeah.
they were talking about water meters.
Yeah.
They were talking about natural gas and electric. fine by solar, that, you know, you would only do it if you want to do it further. It doesn't make sense. Anywhere in the country to heat your water with solar.
Yeah.
Do you do any solar thermal?
We do solar thermal. We recently completed a multifamily 32 solar water heater project. I turn people away from solar water heaters a lot. I know it ticks off my sales manager, but if you have a household of two and you're going to pay $5,000 for a water heater, you're only spending, a household of two, you're only spending $15, $20 a month on water heating. So it doesn't make sense then. If you've got a household of 5, maybe a couple teenagers, then you're spending close to $100 a month maybe on water heating or 80. That's when it makes sense. You gotta have the usage. Or if you can do a new construction, if you can tie it into your mortgage, then your savings of $15 or $20 a month will be greater than that $5 a month it adds to your mortgage. That's when it makes more sense. But on an existing home, if it's just a small household, I tell folks it's just not worth it. Just think solar PV instead. But we recently we're doing a water heater, 3-panel water heater with a 120 gallon tank, but he's got a household of 6. And it made sense for him. But if you can't do it in new construction, you've got a small household, it doesn't make sense. And if we've had people come in and say, hey, I've got a tankless water heater on natural gas, what would it be like if I went to switch it to solar? I'm like, you're doing good already. Yeah, so that's the thing about solar. Now, if you're in a climate like Hawaii or California and you're paying a lot of money for electricity and you have really better solar resource, then it might make a little more sense on a smaller level for a retrofit, but in our area, I don't